All right, so I started cooking when I was 17. As I told you before, my inspiration was with my grandmother. She was the one who really sort of taught me that eye for detail. I really was surrounded by the kitchen all of my life, and I think, being in a commercial kitchen at the age of 5 with my father, my uncle was a chef. Like, it was really something that consumed me, and I always had a love for food. I think I moved down to Sydney. I actually started my apprenticeship at 17. I worked in a small fine dining restaurant, and I worked for another hotel, and just learned different systems in the kitchen. I did a 4-year apprenticeship. And then what happened was 3.5 years in, because you normally do 4 years in Australia to get you qualified, so you have your trade certificate and your diploma. There's quite an extensive food science, and you have to go to school for 3 years and all this sort of stuff as well. But my chef had written a letter to the apprenticeship board and said I had already been cooking as a professional, and I'm already ready to go. So they pardoned me and gave me 6 months off my apprenticeship. And then I was actually referred down to another chef down in Sydney. So I worked for a restaurant called Garden Court Restaurant, which I worked there for about a year. It was nice. Sydney was a big adventure for me. I was quite young at the time. And then I moved to the Ritz-Carlton and I worked for the restaurant there. And I became the chef de cuisine at the age of, I think I was like 23. So I was a kid. But it was a small fine dining restaurant. There was 30 seats and it was like old school, but it was really nice. It was really interesting because I had literally started and there was only, 5 covers a night, 7 covers a night. And then after the 3 years that I worked there, we were doing 75 on a Saturday. We're doing 40 and 50 through the week. So for a 30-seat restaurant, that was pretty good. There was no public relations. It was just me cooking and then people, word of mouth, they were coming. So that was a big success for my age. Then I moved to Washington, D.C. I lived there for about 8 months. And I'd opened up a bunch of hotels I was kind of like a task force guy, so I'd have to go and open these hotels for the food and beverage and restaurants and stuff. And then I moved to New York City. I opened up the Ritz-Carlton in Central Park and I worked for the chef who was a chef de cuisine at Jean-Georges. Anyway, make a long story short, I worked for him for about 3 years. Went down to the Satai Hotel and opened that up as the executive chef at 29. I did 2.5 years there. By the time I'm 31 and a half, I opened up my first restaurant, which had quite a lot of acclaim. I got 2 Michelin stars, Best New Restaurant of the Year, all this stuff from Esquire magazine, New York magazine, Best New Chef by New York magazine, all this sort of good stuff, right? And then basically I opened another restaurant which got a Michelin star called Juni. And now what I did was I realized that, especially for my ambition, I wanted to start to build different concepts. It's not just doing fine dining for me, wasn't really that satisfying. Like, I like it, but I didn't want that to be the be all and end all. So I started doing different concepts. And now I have a restaurant downtown called Vestry in Soho. I run a private building in Midtown, which has a restaurant in it, and it's very, very fancy. I have another restaurant called Aqua. It's in Las Vegas. I have another one in Miami, which I'm about to open in about a year, and then 2 more in Atlanta that are finished, conceptualized, and being built at the moment. So, I found the pleasure of building these concepts and owning these concepts, and, I've sort of like built my way and pathed my way. And it wasn't just about having the restaurants, but it's about creating these experiences for the people. And that for me was the most important thing, is that I create an emotional base and these experiential situations for human beings. They turn into lifetime memories and really big occasions. And that was very satisfying. And I think that's why I cook. It's a very competitive industry for myself, but I compete against myself. I love cooking and I love food, but there's so many different aspects of it too. It's like a lot of the people who have worked for me have either become an executive chef or an owner of their restaurant, or the GMs have gone on to bigger and better things, become vice presidents and all this other stuff. So I feel like, it's the interior, it's the conceptualization, it's the running, it's all of those things that make me happy. I think that the challenge is maintaining great staff and making sure that the clients also maintain as well. I really believe in making sure that you give the best product, you give the best tools, and people stay. And if they go away, they generally come back and work for me because culture is everything. I love to build really positive culture within the restaurants. It's about, the challenge is also retention of your clients. I've had clients that have followed me for 20 years. I mean, they've gone to every restaurant, they still consistently eat. So by doing that, then you have to also open things that are going to keep them interested too. So I think that's the challenge of the future, is just making sure that all of the people that I've sort of built over 2 decades continues to come into the restaurants. Sustainability started to be a big conversation. It started around about 10 years ago. And I think that, it's not just the recycling, but it's really about, manipulating all of the product that we have in-house. Not just that, but it's, making sure there's very little wastage, making sure that we can buy from the best sources as well. And I think that, when you think about, just the recycling program and knowing where that food goes and understanding that it's being consumed, as a simple example, that is a meaningful thing. I think that knowing where your providers are getting your food from and how they're growing it as well, and making sure it's a safe but also a sustainable source, it's very important for us too. It leaches into every little aspect of the business. It's not just the food, it's also the wine, it's everything. And it's a mindset that you have to have. You have to make sure that you keep a very positive and a very sort of structured mind for sustainability. And trust me, living in New York is very difficult because you have a big city and you have to bring everything into it. It's not like you're living on a little farm where you can grow everything, and it's just not that way. I think I probably gravitate to a lot of sushi restaurants because that's the way I love to eat. I think one of the best restaurants that I've eaten in the last couple of years would be Noda, and it's just a 7-seat sushi restaurant. It's very expensive. I don't like the price, but I love the food, and the chef's talented. But they have a certain essence of umami with the entire building. It's not just the food, it's just they have a secret sauce of really making that experience a lot of fun, and it's really high level stuff, so I really appreciate that. Favorite cooking book would probably be Tetsuya Wakuda. Back in the day, I think I got it in like 2005 or 2007 or something like this. It was a long time ago. But it's one of those books that is timeless. And like when I look at his food, he is one of the guys who is a Japanese chef, worked as a dishwasher, wasn't formally trained, but just has the art of food. And he understands the simplicity and the culture of using really supreme products. I've really sort of gravitated towards that book because it's never really finished. Like, you could produce that food when he cooks that food today, and it would be at the same quality and in the same sort of vogue as it was in the early 2000s. A movie I recommend, I think that recently I like horror movies, so Evil Dead Rising was pretty cool. Healthy environment and culture in a kitchen has to be built, and it has to come from the top. You have to be direct and talk to the people who are in charge, which is myself, and everyone else in the team are in charge. From the dishwasher to the server, they're all in charge. Building a healthy culture, you have to really talk and walk the same program. So if we see that it changes a little bit, or somebody has a little bit of a different idea which is negative, we have to talk about it, we have to put it out. The fires have to be put out straight away. You have to talk directly. There can be no hidden agendas. You can't have any politics. You have to be a straight shooter in this business, and you have to talk to people straight to their face. So if I see something that I don't like or it's incorrect, I will tell the person, and if they don't see something that they like, they have to say it as well. We all have a mouth, we all have a voice, and we all have a brain. I think that's the best way to keep a really positive culture. I think what's important from this course is the human contact and the understanding of it is about a tasting menu, but it's also about the fundamental human aspect of how you do it. Like, everyone has the ability, you just have to focus and understand that it takes decades to get there if you want to be at this level. But at the same time, there's no reason why you can't just look at this, use it as an instructional, and then you can go create something your own. Like, these parameters and rules are not strict. You have the ability to be able to do whatever you want, whatever your emotions feel, and whatever your brain can do.